You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and now it's time for the Paranormal Peep Show.
Hi, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show for this April edition. So I'm your host, Neil Ward, with my fellow host, Andy Chaplin. Andy, how are you? Good to see you.
Hello, Neil. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I've been really busy today. I've been busy writing my book. So I think I've told you I've already got a book in the pipeline, which is going to be published in November, which is called True Tales of the Paranormal. But I'm now working on the next one, which is Unexplained Modern Mysteries. And so I'm covering at the moment a chapter on Bigfoot. So I've been researching all into the origins of Bigfoot, where it came from. And the fact is that Bigfoot doesn't just exist in North America. What we believe is Bigfoot exists all around the world, which is, and it's just different names, like the, I think they call it, what do they call it in Australia? The Yowie, I think it's called.
That.
As the owl mass, and in various sizes, in different parts of the United States, they call it the skunk ape, and that's because it smells so bad.
Yeah.
And that's a common description of the Bigfoot.
Yeti, Sasquatch.
Yeah, and Sasquatch is the Canadian, Native American Canadian term given to it. So in Canada, you tend to hear the word Sasquatch, and in Northern America, they tend to call it Bigfoot. Abominable snowman is the one that comes from the Himalayas, and the reason it's called abominable is a mistranslation. They called it a terrible something or other, and the man mistranslated it as abominable, and so that's how it became abominable snowman. And with that, it doesn't necessarily live in the high glacier mountains. It tends to be spotted crossing over valleys, and it's normally mountaineers that are high up in the mountains can look down and see it. The abominable snowman is actually further down into the valley, and it crosses over into valleys where it can get, to sources of food. Basically, it doesn't live high up in the mountains. It's too cold, and there'll be nothing up there for it. Basically.
Talking of abominable and terrible in Canada, when do the Canadians get a chance to vote out communist dictator Justin Trudeau?
The abominable dictator.
Yeah. But how many more years or months do they have to endure that utter twat?
Is it every 5 years they have a general election?
Is it? I don't know. It's UK's 4 years, isn't it? And America's 4 years, I think. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think the most in the UK, you can take it up to 5 years, but most general elections come around every 4 years. If the government of the day thinks that they've got a good chance of winning, they're called an early general election, while things are a little bit sweeter and hopefully capitalise on that popular thing. That's if it's all done fair and square, of course.
Which you probably won't be, because that's what communists do. I like to know you've got a little bit of a space thing going on with your shirt. Is that
yeah.
To commemorate the lunar eclipse? Do we need Marcus Allen on here to talk about the moon? I'm not sure.
This was bought for me, and it's very apt because it's got space, stars, and comets and things like that. And every now and again, I wear it because I think, I do like this shirt. And I've got a NASA shirt as well with a little astronaut on it. And I actually, for Easter, I got an Easter egg with an astronaut on it. So it's all very space themed, but I've always loved space and science fiction. So yeah.
If we do another Apollo Detectives, please wear the NASA T-shirt, because
I will. Yeah.
Put Marcus in a tears, and it'll be great fun.
I will. So what have you been up to then?
Mostly work, actually. So sorting out signs and things. There's something extra that we're doing with tuned in events. So we used to be doing kind of one-to-one readings, and then we bolted on demos to that. We're now bolting on food to the whole thing, and we're creating psychic suppers now. So people can kind of sit down, eat a meal, like have mediums come to them, do readings, and then like a bit of a show as well. So if anyone's in the southeast of England area, have a look at Tuned In Events, and it will be on Facebook and Instagram, Tuned with a D in Events. And we're doing all sorts, really similar to Philip. I sometimes see Philip's posters kind of flashing up. Philip Kinsella, our guest, coming up soon, with the various psychic things that he gets up to as well. So I'm sure at some point we'll work together. I hope we'll do something together.
Well, let's welcome Philip, as we've mentioned, Philip. So our guest today is Philip Kinsella, and he has his own show with his brother Ronnie called Twin Souls on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And Philip is an author of many UFO and paranormal books. And he also happens to be a clairvoyant medium as well. So he's got many strings to his bow. And we're going to be talking about his latest book, which I do have in front of me, which is called Terrestrial Trespassers. So welcome, Philip. Are you there?
Hello, Philip.
Yes. Hello, Andy and Neil. Very honoured to be back on your show again. I'm very delighted. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us once again, Philip. So how are you, first of all?
Well, I started the year off not too good. I ended up in hospital and had an illness for just under 3 months. So it's been quite a struggle for me. They thought, first of all, that I had fractured my spine, but it was linked with muscular and also another problem to my neck. So the beginning of this year was not very good. So there's always hope that things will improve. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you did with it, or sprained it, or how?
Well, yes, I was taking my sister's dog for a walk and she bolted. It wasn't the dog's fault, but that pulled everything out, literally. And of course, Neil and I have spoken about some rather family gruesome things that have occurred with him and family there. So we're recovering. So I'm working on that now. So at least I know what the major problems that I've had before in the past. So, we all get these knocks. I've got nothing really to complain about because that's incidental compared to what some people go through.
Yeah, well, as I was telling Philip, I think I told you this, Andy, I'm not sure, but my brother at the beginning of the year suffered a major aortic aneurysm. He's only 18 months older than me, and an aortic aneurysm is where your artery from the heart splits literally in two, and all the blood pours inside you, and it can be fatal.
Did he have the ouchie, Neil?
I really don't know. I suspect he probably did, but he was in hospital, and there's only a 20% survival rate if they can get you to hospital, because most people, like my mum and dad, sadly died from it. My dad got to hospital, but they said, sorry, there's nothing we can do for him, and he sadly passed away. And my mum just sort of passed away that night at home in 2016, very suddenly. Of course, we didn't know what it was at the time. But they managed to get my brother to hospital, and initially they were going to turn him away, but his wife insisted that they look further, and thank God she's did, because that's when they discovered the problem. And he was then taken to another hospital, and he was literally saying goodbyes to everybody because he thought, this is it, I'm going, sort of thing. And he had the operation, and he was kept in a coma for 6 days whilst he recovered, and he wasn't expected to survive. But the irony was, the bitter pill to swallow was that whilst he was asleep in the coma, his own father-in-law, his wife's father, was suddenly rushed to hospital, and he died of a stroke whilst my brother was in the coma. So he woke up sort of 6 days later thinking, how is everybody? Where is everybody? And he found out his father-in-law had passed away whilst he was in the coma, which is a shocking thing, a terrible start for the year.
I know, it's very sad. And so I have nothing to complain about. I'm still alive and on this side of life. I haven't been abducted. So that's, I suppose that's a very good thing to acknowledge. But I'm sorry for all of us because a lot of people have gone through really difficult times. But we're here to cheer things up and, keep going forward. That's all we can do, isn't it?
We're here to talk about the wonderful visitors that pop in the night to us, called the Greys, which is the subject of your latest book, Philip, which is called, if I can bring it into focus there, I'll probably put, it's the Terrestrial Trespassers, the Greys, Abductions and Areas of High Strangeness. Now, it's interesting, on this book, Philip, I was actually trying to work it out because you got a foreword by Peter Robbins, who we've interviewed on the show a while back.
Yes.
But you've also got an introduction. And I was trying to work out, what's the difference between a foreword and an introduction? Is there a difference?
Not really, no. It's just a polite way of not putting prologue or, forward too many times. I think it's nice when you have the endorsement of some really cool authors out there. I mean, we've all gone down that road at some point. And I was very honoured. Peter, I've known for many long years, for a very long time. And, we're not going to get involved with the Rendlesham problem, the issue that he had. And he's a good, sweet man. He's brilliant. He knows all of the top ufologists. He knows his stuff. And, he couldn't help being pulled into something that he believed actually was real. So that's another story. But I was so pleased and grateful also for the authors to endorse that project. It was a hard project to write, I have to say. And with any book, as you know, Neil, and Andy as well, with regards to your future endeavors, you'll always have the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the people that don't like what you're writing, or they've got an opinion, which is important as long as it's constructive. But this is what we find within the annals of ufology. There is great divide. And of course, as you know, both of you know that, like yourselves, I'm very grounded, very to the point, and very open also to all forms of speculation. But I've had people telling me where the Greys come from, what they're called, even the Reptillians even the name of their high command, and I just lose the plot. I think it's hard enough trying to establish exactly what we're dealing with on an empirical level of conscious awareness. And this is something I think that a lot of people out there have their own ideas. Where do you draw the line? Where is that distinction between fact and fantasy? And this is where we're trying to draw those parallels. The phenomena is real, it exists, absolutely, but not quite the way I think that the system that we serve has sold it to us. I said to Neil earlier, I think there's more to this than just the nuts and bolts aspect with it.
Philip, what's your issues to do with the Rendlesham thing? Because funnily enough, actually, somebody's invited me to go on a Rendlesham night watch. Is that advisable or not?
Well, in large groups, sometimes it's good, but it doesn't always work. Rendlesham is interesting. And I think for all of us, I always say that we're all important. When you start going down the rabbit hole with this, you start to find yourself in cases of synchronicity and levels of high strangeness. I remembered with regards to Rendelsham when I was young, and I remembered the story breaking out in the News of the World, I think it was, on the front page of the News of the World, and it said, it's official, UFO lands in Suffolk or something like that. Well, anyway, I remembered I was in a field of all places as a kid, reading this newspaper. I got a copy of it and found that fascinating. And then fast forward, a number of years, and then finding myself meeting Peter Robbins and then going to Rendelsham because he said, you need to go there because there's still a lot of activity happening there. And of course, I didn't understand what Peter was talking about. We all knew about the 1980 event with Colonel Charles Holt and the American military. And me and Ronnie have met Colonel Holt, and he's an esteemed gentleman, very grounded. We had a meal with him, and he's sharp as a knife. And what he said was that thing that they saw was not from this world. And would you believe it, that when we started to explore the forest, the area of Rendelsham, I then met Brenda Butler purely by, well, I wouldn't say by chance, through synchronicity, and that we ended up co-authoring a book together called Sky Crash Throughout Time. And people didn't want to know about that. They only wanted to know about the 1980 event that was celebrated because it had been, an experience that was linked with military guys. But when we did our research, we established a lot of other reports and phenomena that happened to us also, even to the point of summoning a UFO on the 8th of June, 1998 at 10:15 p.m. at night that occurred in the field called Capel Green, and that is documented. But no one is like, no, we don't want to know. We're not interested. And I think this is where we're missing key elements, key points to this, because this is a big problem. But it reminded me a lot of the difficulties that we have with many other subject matters, mediumship, clairvoyance, love after death. So yeah, Rendlesham had played a huge part, but unfortunately I suffered with the onslaught of many other individuals who did not want me to talk about this, or it's just one of those things, I suppose. They don't want you gate crashing on someone else's territory.
Mm.
Mm.
When
you go into this...
So who is it that you would say, Philip, that's kind of not wanting you to speak up on this? Are we talking Men in Black? Are we talking like UFO groups that are quite cliquey, or?
Well, certain individuals that I won't name here, but certainly I think this destroys a lot of what you're trying to achieve. especially where other researchers are concerned, it's rather like Roswell. I mean, I've never been to Roswell, but I do know that there's been a lot of controversy, especially when new researchers come in and they voice their opinion, their theoretical opinion on that. And so you'll find this with a lot of cases, and within ufology, you have the love and light, and you have those who stand on the side of, well, we're dealing with negative entities. And I have been trying to establish the truth, like yourselves, in what we're actually dealing with. And it's just incredible. It's like anything really in life. Whatever you do, whatever you write, you'll be attacked for it. But you just have to be steadfast and very, very grounded with it, and trying to open up all these areas of investigation. But I will tell you that the things that have happened to me, that doesn't make me unique, have categorically, not just within UFOs or alien intrusion, but also the psychic component, categorically tells me that we are dealing with elements of interdimensional contact. And that whatever they are, wherever they're coming from in terms of UFOs, or even in cryptozoology, Neil and I were talking about that, the dogman, werewolf, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it, these nightmarish creatures. If you can tell me what bar they're hanging around in, I'd like to go down and have a word with them, because where are they?
Getting drunk. So why did you decide to focus on the Greys out of all the reported alien abductions? The Greys obviously they're kind of the most common. Was that part of the reason why you wanted to write about them particularly?
Well, I've been very interested in our origins as a species. And when you, as you both know, when you've been touched by this singularity in a number of times, majorly, very close, you're left with questions. And I think we live by a system that we serve that has lied to us. And in reference to the Greys, I mean, I've had people telling me, oh, the Greys have deserted, they scattered off now. How do they know that? You know, where did they get this information from? In fact, what we do know about the Greys is that they lie more times than not to their subjects when there has been an abduction that's been initiated. The Greys interested me because I had an experience back in 1989 which changed my concept of reality. And there was a part to that experience, one physical, one non-physical, that seemed to open up some kind of awareness with regards to what the Greys may be. Now, after the experience that I had, that was very raw and savage and embarrassing, that I'm not going to go on about here, because, you know, but another researcher found some amazing parallels between what my brother had done on the physical part and what a Grey had done at the last part of my experience. The Greys seemed to be mimicking what my brother had been doing. So this kind of like led me, after the experience in 1989, after I had the marks and the trauma, in 1996, I had the only time that I could recall was some kind of download. I remembered I was at work, and all of a sudden it was a feeling like my mind had literally opened, and I'm not privy to anything that's subjectively ridiculous. But there again, you know, how can you guard yourself against what I'm just about to say? It was like my mind had opened up, and I had this image, this knowledge immediately coming into my head about the Greys and what they could possibly represent on a theoretical level. And I remembered that I literally typed the whole thing up, sent it to Alien Encounters magazine, which was a big magazine at the time, and they published it, and they said that it was revolutionary within its speculation, because the Greys, because I had experienced a few of them, as well as, dare I say it, the Reptillians, but now we're making new headway in understanding this phenomena seems to interconnect with other entities, and I'm not going down that road with who knows what and their high command or what position they have. I have no idea. But with regards to the Greys, I was wondering why it was that a species that cannot themselves reproduce, almost like a cloned unit, was interested in the aspect of reproduction. And not only that, but how they were able to infiltrate our reality through solid structures. Now, when I started looking into this and I had this download, the download was more or less explaining that these creatures, these beings, whatever you want to call them, these denizens, operate on a level very much like the near-death experience. when you have someone who has died and reports going to the other side through to a light, communicating with loved ones through telepathic exchange, a sense of timelessness. And if there is something that's occurred to their physical body through illness that they've just left, a lot of times when they've returned back from the dead, back to their body, they're healed. Now, when you take an abduction, when someone is forcibly taken, the beings themselves normally knock out anyone around them or distort their reality. Then they bring that individual into their spatial reality. There is a sense of timelessness, and there is a sense of communication on a telepathic level. And implants are also found enmeshed within the body once the experience has completed its cycle. Now, when you have a near-death experience, the person will most notably always remember their encounter, because I think that's a natural process of the body and the consciousness, the soul, the spirit removing itself from the vehicle. In a forced episode, in terms of abduction, I think that when the individual is being taken primarily from their normal processing of information through the brain and into that reality, there's some kind of wipeout with memory exchange. And it's no different than an astral that says that when they're outside the stratosphere of the world, when they remove themselves, they're in space. There's a difference. There's some kind of, they feel differently about the whole thing. So I was looking at the Greys in terms of some kind of cloned entity that was perhaps not able to reproduce, perhaps a species that was outside the field of reproduction through creationism, and that they're interested in us as a reproductive species because they cannot have what we have. And this has led me to new ideas now recently about what possibly we could be dealing with regards to these Greys, as it were.
So back in '89, you had your experience, and now you've got like a good 40 years plus of reading and mixing with other people and things. As your original experience kind of now, has it matured in the sense of you kind of got a really good handle on what's happened, or is it still a baffling thing when you look back at it?
No, I have no idea. Pierre Sabac, another, and I'm sure you know him anyway, he was able to connect two paths to that. And that's why I say to anyone who has an abduction or an experience to please tell the truth, remain grounded, however far-fetched it may seem. Remember, this is back in 1989, and when this occurred to me, the trauma of it still, I wouldn't say it's apparent today, but I'm still left with question marks. I've had people telling me, oh, it's an experience, you wrote this in your life chart. Really? Or on the other side, before I incarnated into this human form. Really? I don't think so. Also, people telling me, well, it was a positive experience because you saw it negatively. No, I don't buy it. I think that what's happening here is that when you, as an individual, and I understand the bigger picture, like you, Andy and Neil, both of you, we're all in the same school here. But we understand there is another side. We understand about elements of consciousness of the soul, the incarnation and reincarnation procedures that appear possible. Whether or not the pre-planning part needs to be examined, I think, on a larger scale, which I'm doing at the moment. We think about people saying, oh, I've planned my life chart, but I'm going to come down in Libya, or I'm going to come down in a war-torn country, or I'm going to come down in Auschwitz and go through that. So I'm not so sure about that. I think we have a certain free will, but certainly I think when we look at the phenomena in terms of what we are, what we represent, it changes us. And I think this phenomena is drawn to you as an individual because you are operating differently from your fellow human beings, because the system that we serve is quite happy to program a public who are quite willing to have a very basic understanding of life and death, which they want you to understand is a reality, of knowledge, of information. And then when you look and you start digging deeper, you find that our very own system that we serve is hiding something. And this is clearly evident now with a lot of new information coming out and the fight, the war with the Pentagon, whichever way you want to perceive this reality. But I think the phenomena, the real part, the rawness of this phenomena is aware of you when you become changed, when you are touched, when you're operating differently. We know about the auras, the auric energy field, all that type of thing, and the facilitation of energy around the biological system. It could be that these beings are quite aware of this and want to know what it is that makes you not unique, because we're all unique, but different, and what it is that you know that they want. So I believe that there is a systematic cover-up, which we know already, but not just from our system, but also perhaps from a force that is working or aware of this system that is keeping these secrets. So I think when it comes to not just the greys, we hear of other beings, and I've primarily focused on the greys because one, had interactions with them, and two, because I wanted to truly establish what they were because of the levels of high strangeness and what they were doing to me. And as I said, I'm not going to go down that road, but now I understand, I think, to a degree of what it was they were looking for, in terms, because we are so far removed from them, but they seem to know a lot about us. But it seems like they want something that we have that they can't. And I think through this self-replication program, or this the abduction phenomena, this is why we're having this. And it's been set like, oh, it's a UFO coming from another planet, and they're just examining us. No, it's far more complex than that, I can assure you.
So we could be going into things to do with the alien hybrid program, and the idea that, I mean, some people have said that they haven't even got souls, and what they're looking for, the missing element in terms of their reproduction, is the soul element.
Correct. And I addressed this back in 1996 in the article, which was called Spirits in a Material World, which made parallels between the abduction phenomena and closely associated with NDE, and formulating this hypothesis that we are dealing with cloned entities. But I think it goes further than that with what these beings are. I think we're not perhaps seeing some type of extraterrestrial species. I think we are seeing something far older, and something that goes back into antiquity and has been able to morph and shape itself accordingly within the structuring of our belief system as we go forward within our evolution, as it were, as humans. So it does run very deep, and there will be people telling you that you are wrong, that this is what they are and this is where they come from. Well, that's fine. I may be wrong, but I've always stated I'm open to all levels of theoretical debate, but we have to be open-minded. But some people, unfortunately, will picture themselves into a corner and say, no, this is what it is. No, we don't know. We have no idea, but we can connect with certain patterns, with certain dots, as David Icke famously says, connecting those dots.
Talking of connecting dots, I'm sort of drawn back to thinking of the Betty and Barney Hill case of 1961.
Yes.
Which was when really, I think we've probably got one of the first descriptions of grey-like beings.
Yes.
And for people that don't know, they were abducted on their way back from Canada. I think they'd gone to Niagara Falls or something like that on a holiday. And they were driving back, hoping to get back by about 1 o'clock to New Hampshire, where they lived up.
Yes.
And instead they arrived at 4 o'clock. And so they thought, well, where's the 2 hours gone missing? And they felt, and you talk about them in your book, they felt like they had to wash and shower and things because they felt that they were abused in some way, but they couldn't quite remember when or what exactly happened. And so it was after some hypnosis that they discovered that the object that they recall now seeing, instead of flying away, actually landed, and Barney was dragged onto the craft, and Betty was taken on board as well, and they were put in separate rooms, and they seemed to be wearing uniforms. And I think Betty was asked something like, "Where do you come from?" And the leader said something like, and I can't remember if they said if they were talking telepathically or vocally to them. I can't remember that now. I don't know if you...
What they did was that when they spoke, there was some kind of membrane behind the slight orifice that vibrated. It reminded Betty of fish, but she wasn't too sure if there was some kind of oral communication or mental. And this is the thing, when you're in that experience, which I had been in, it feels like you're talking. It feels very weird because this exchange, it's almost like a knowing. It's not like, oh, this is a new language. It's like, well, it's there. That case. And I know Kathleen Marden. I'm sure you know her as well. She's a wonderful soul, a wonderful advocate for not only UFO research, but also psychic investigations. And she's helped me and my brother a lot. So we have a lot to thank her for. And her auntie and uncle, a loving couple, what happened to them was very, very strange when they were coming through New Hampshire. This is where Indian Head was primarily where the abduction had occurred. And there were two parts to that, the viewing of UFO, and then, of course, this sense of the beeping on the car that they heard, but the sense of losing time that they had. Now, what's interesting, if we look at that, and we have to be very open-minded with it, with regards not just to the case which did happen, but open-minded to, what really was going on. If you examine that in terms of the abduction, when Betty had her examination, there was an examiner who then did his investigations with Barney separately. There was a lot more that did occur that had not been reported through the initial investigation by John G. Fuller, an American investigator and brilliant author who wrote The Interrupted Journey. Stanton Friedman and Kathleen Marden took their level to a scientific height with regards to the analysis. Now, what I find very strange with regards to this is, let's think of it this way. You have two wonderful couples. They get abducted by grey-like beings. They had barrel-like chests, and they wore caps, and they think they had some kind of communication devices around their heads like I'm wearing now. And when the examiner had finished his examination of Barney, he came into the room where Betty was with the leader. And the examiner tried to remove Betty's teeth, and Betty didn't understand why the examiner was doing that. And the examiner was asking why it was that Barney's teeth could be removed and hers could not. And she had to explain to the examiner that Barney wore dentures. Now, think about that. These aliens had supposedly traveled all the way from Zeta Reticuli to pick up Betty and Barney, but they were not aware of dentures. So is this the first time they came across a human that had dentures? And it's very bizarre, isn't it? It's very strange in terms of that. So I think when you're looking at it, Betty changed her opinion with regards to them over time. She saw it as a very constructive episode, whereas if you hear the hypnosis tapes Dr. Benjamin Simon did on Barney, they are truly horrific, with him recounting his experience. So yes, I suppose in some ways it depends how you translate that experience. To Betty, she was very excited to be connected with these beings, and yet Barney was completely the opposite. And remember also, like many abductions, they came in a dream state, or they weren't able to recall all elements of the abduction because they're suppressed deep within the subconscious mind. Now, mine I could recall straight away without any problem at all. And is that possible because no one can hypnotize me or aggress me? I don't know. It's just one of those things. But that was a very interesting case and still is to this day.
Yeah, Kathleen Marden, we should point out, is the niece of Betty and Barney.
Yes.
So she got to know her very well, of course, being a family member. Yes. So she got really a lot of good information directly from the source. And then she went on to become a UFO researcher, as you say, herself, into the paranormal. And the thing was that I recall about that case was that Betty asked the leader where they came from, and he said something like, well, do you know where you are on this star map?
That's
or
right.
And she said, well, no. He said, there's no point in me explaining, paraphrasing it, of course, of where we are from. And she recalled seeing a star map, and it was only later on that some lady, university lady or something,
Marjorie Fish.
Marjorie Fish, that's it. She managed to construct a 3D model of possibly what Betty had seen. And they thought, as you said, it was the star system as what was it? It's
Zeta Reticuli.
Zeta Reticuli. Yeah. Is it a double star system or something?
I think it's a double binary star system. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Now, what I wonder about that is, you see, you take it at face value, you think, oh, right, okay, a star map on board the ship and stuff. Now, it might have been that they had that there, but I'm wondering, in subsequent books I've read, that these UFOs, they're small scout craft and they're not part of a fleet that would go to outer space. They would be craft that might traverse around our world. Whether they come from another dimension or not, I don't know. Maybe they do. But I'm wondering, would they be carrying star maps on their craft if they're just, if any map, I would have thought they would have a road map of where they're flying over. It's just one of these little things, that I wondered.
Yeah, I agree with you. And if you look at Roswell, for instance, one of the most famous cases within the annals of ufology, I mean, let's look at the quite obvious facts. And we know that a disc, an unknown object, had crashed on the ranch of Mac Brazel in Roswell, as it were. And this object had scattered debris over quite a vast area of land. All these bits of debris and bits of like thin, like wafer thin, like material that was as hard as metal, because when you bent it, it kind of like unbent. There was no creases. You couldn't damage it. The main actual structured craft was found much further away by the Roswell Army. Now, they stated, to begin with, as we all know, that the U.S. Army was in possession of a disc. And then, of course, it changed to a mogul weather balloon. Now, what's interesting, you have to look at certain things that people miss, because the press was controlled at that time by, obviously, higher establishments. And through the army were taking their orders through those in higher command and in governance. But if it had been a mogul weather balloon that had crashed, it was that secret that not even the army themselves knew where it was. They didn't even know it crashed. So you have to ask yourself the question, hang on a minute, if this was an experimental weather balloon, and, during that time, during 1947, coming out of the war, as it were, I mean, that's top secret stuff. You'd have a team of scientists or army officials at least tracking it or being there, but they didn't seem to know where it was. They didn't even know it was around. So you can see that these lies, this disinformation comes forward from a system that is trying to hide something of monumental importance to the public and from the public for reasons that I think are not just because it might upset or, scare people. I think the truth will scare people, the real truth with regards to this, but not like the version of, we've got a lot of people who are religious within their ideologies and it might upset the balance of the church. No, because there's a lot more people now who are not so attached to religious ideologies and more open-minded to the concept of life out there, or life through there, as it's more correct assumption to be made there. So we don't really know what's going on. I mean, at the end of the day, we've got a system we serve that lies to us, and I'm not just talking about ufology. I'm talking about the political things and everything you can think of. So it's rather complicated within its infrastructure, but I herald those men and women who are fighting for, I don't think we'll get full disclosure, but fighting to bring this out to the public, to tell the public, hang on just a minute, you're telling us 1 minute that UFOs, or now UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, strange that they changed the acronym for a subject that they don't believe in, but they've made it more closer to home, haven't they? And I spoke to not just Paul Sinclair, a good friend also, but also Barry Fitzgerald, another brilliant researcher, and Steve Mira. And they made me aware of the fact that do you not understand that in terms of the UFO, unidentified flying object is too spacey, but now it's brought down to unidentified aerial phenomena, and also it's no longer extraterrestrial, it's non-human intelligence. Non-human intelligence, which is taking the emphasis away from the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Now, what's that telling us? Now, we're involved with mediumship. We're involved with understanding of communication from those who have crossed over. And people will say, well, hang on a minute. What differences is there between, and parallels to be made also with regards to psychic phenomena and ufology? Well, I'm afraid to say, as you know, there are close parallels to be made there. And I think this is why the system we serve has wanted to decompartmentalize all of these subject matters so that no researcher could put the pieces together. No one would find the truth of what's going on. No one. And yet there are parallels to be made with regards to these connections. And so I think we're dealing ultimately with a force that is able to replicate itself to a degree and hidden itself with not just in plain sight of us, but also within our mythology, and created as such as a mythology, so that it's safe to hide behind that that conditioning within the human mind. So yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it?
What's your idea or your notion of, you probably came across this, that the fact that the whole thing about reincarnation, when you pass over and you go into the light, it's basically like a sausage factory for souls, and you basically get dumped back in a body and repeat and repeat and repeat.
Well, we're now coming into some really interesting grounds here, and something that will suspend our belief systems literally. And, you know, I remembered before I answered that question, when I was younger, any notion of a UFO being anything other than a craft coming from another planet with aliens would never be entertained within my mind. If you ask me, perhaps after my abduction, that I started looking into the interdimensional hypothesis, something I struggled with, but now is an accepted part of my mind. And going forward now into your question about life after death, about the continuation of the soul, of the sausage factory, I do like that terminology, of this false life. Now, this is very interesting. I remembered many long years ago that someone, knowing me as a medium, and I'm a very grounded medium, I'm a survival evidence medium. I just deal with facts and with yes and no's, and with the translation, trying to understand it. As you both are very much aware of anyway, I don't need to explain that to you. But someone contacted me and said, what is this all about, a false light? You know, if we go into this false light, will we find ourselves being reincarnated back into the Earth system? And I said at that point, and I'm honest and I'm black and white, what a load of old rubbish. I understand that the light is where we come from. But now, interestingly, when you start going into research, and people say, another thing I have to key point here, how do you know what you know? Where do you get your information from? And these are keyboard warriors. Well, you have to dig, you have to search, you have to research. It's called research. Neil, you do it. Andy, you do it. You dig. It's like on the X-Files when they said, dig deep, Mr. Mulder. Mm-hmm. You know, you have to dig deep. Now, I understand about this whole process of incarnation and reincarnation. I understand that it's a possibility. How it's done, we don't know. I've been working on a new project now, a psychic book. It's a very in-depth book. And let me tell you, the rawness of that information and research is raw. A lady asked me only a few nights ago, I was working with another medium called Wayne Marriott. And before we shared the platform to do this function for charity, one lady approached me and said, may I ask you a question? And I said, yes, madam, what is that? She said to me, a friend of mine wants to know, is it true that we plan our journey before we incarnate onto the earth plane? And I said to her, well, I think to a degree we do, but I said, think of this, and I've mentioned this before, why would a soul, through this understanding of experience, come back down to this earth plane that's so raw and savage and put themselves in a situation where they are in a war-torn country, they come from deprived families, they were connected or were linked with Auschwitz, it goes on. People say they're offended. No, it's the truth. Now, would a soul really do that? So now, when I saw David Icke talk not long ago, live, I saw him talk, and he made me laugh when he said about this whole thing about the incarnation, reincarnation aspect. He said, why on earth, well, I will use clean words here, he did make me laugh, why on earth would I want to keep coming down to this planet in a star system and a universe that we hardly know anything about, that has there doesn't seem to be an edge or border. If there is, what's at the edge of that border? And he believes that we are, as souls, being tricked back into this system from the soul, because world is being governed, he says, and I've heard this many times before, by what we would consider to be extraterrestrials, but are actually entities who are not of us, not part of our genus, not part of our creation. And there's this been silent war going on, and they feed off of us, not just feed in terms of our physicality, but of our energy vampires. And I was like, well, I've had this many times before, so I need to look into this. And that's exactly what I was doing. And he did show a clip, rather interestingly, from one of the episodes of Star Trek. I think it was one of the Voyager episodes, where Janeway is met by a being, and it's wanting her to go back through this light, and she's questioning the being, and she seems to call them out, as it were, that she's not going through there because she knows that it is for them and not for her. So it's an interesting speculation. I think that it's hard enough for us to try and work out what we are, and this is another point in question. Can you believe that we are born into a system that does not want to acknowledge these fascinating questions, does not want to acknowledge the reality of what's going on around us? It just wants us as a serving mechanism, a biological unit with a sell-by date that does not, the system does not want us to think. It wants us to progress naturally only for its own order, its own means, through work, toil the soil, pay your taxes, don't ask any questions. It is disgusting. And I think that the researchers like yourselves and myself and many other brilliant, wonderful minds, thousands of them, hundreds of thousands around the world, are trying to put these pieces together to bring an end to this control, to this manipulation, and let us work together to try and find the truth of what we are, where we come from, the truth of our genesis, the truth of the so-called paranormal, ufology, cryptozoology, all these types of things. I've never understood it. Why this silence, this denial? It's ridiculous, especially in the religious fraternity. Oh yes, we believe in God and all hell Jesus and all the rest of it, sing and dance, that's all accepted. Oh, it's different when something is connected with faith, isn't it? Oh, that's all acceptable. But when you're starting to bring hard evidence to the table, the system doesn't like that, does it? Oh, no.
So
No.
I think David Icke is right with that. And so the question is, what do we do about it? How can we stop this?
I have an idea.
Go for it.
Well, you see, this system that we serve, they are mere puppets, those at the top of the symbolic pyramid of power. Those in governance, more times than not, are working for those at the higher command of the social pyramid of power, symbolic pyramid of power. One of the things that these entities or these beings in control do not like is when you are connected to a God source, when your soul, your consciousness, or your spirit is connected to a higher order, because these entities at the top know nothing of creation. They know nothing of love. They only know fear. And have you also clocked the fact that whenever humanity seems to be lifting itself beyond this current level of where we are from this doom and gloom, when it starts to lift itself up, they send a barrage of negativity your way to bring and disable human consciousness. Now, one of the things that these entities, these beings don't like, and they do not like at all, is creativity and also love, or a connection with source. It's something they've been denied themselves. They can't have that. And when you look at the abduction phenomena, it's interesting, isn't it, when you talk of these greys and these beings and what they do to an individual, what they're looking for. And as I said, there is something about us as the primary model, the Adama, the creation, that is so far removed from them. So it's quite clear to see that they know that we are more powerful with our beliefs, with our structured belief systems, with our connection to source, with spirit. They know that, but they will do everything they can to disable that and control it. Oh, they will buy you up, They'll make you a millionaire. They'll give you all the gongs available. They will make you rich and powerful, but only for their own means. Because when their means, those humans, when their means have finished and completed its cycle here, they are fools, because they will find themselves perhaps trapped within the lower or the ether, the lower levels, or the astral planes, because these beings that are in charge or running the show, those draconians, archons, whatever you want to call them, they cannot rise to where we go. They don't have that ability. They do not have that connection. We do. And this is why they're trying to keep us trapped in this cycle of incarnation and reincarnation to bring us back again, because it's the only thing they can do. So, I mean, it's theoretical, but a lot of it makes absolute sense to me with what's going on. And let's just another quickie here while I'm on the run here with this. Isn't it interesting how, people are all too quick to say, oh no, you can't talk about that. You can't mention that. But the reality is quite clear. We want to know what we are, who created us, not just about Genesis, but the truth of that. And if you go through history and the past, once again, you find that a lot of the knowledge has been hidden from us. And I think that people, those that are not in the know, God love them, because everyone is important here. I don't care if you're the man with the can or the king with the crown. Everyone's important. But if those good souls were told the truth of what the UAP phenomena represented, I think they would be completely horrified, literally.
Now, when you had your encounter back in 89, Philip,
yes.
You mentioned in your book about greys, but you also mentioned that you also thought you saw 3 reptilians.
Yes,
yeah,
they were there.
Now, that's an interesting thing. So can you explain a little bit about why do you think the reptilians would be working with the greys?
Well, were they? I mean, this is the thing, when you get involved with a so-called abduction, the phenomena seems to connect very deeply within the elements of the human mind. They're able to facilitate themselves through this way. This is why you're disabled. You're not in control. They are in control. I've had some people telling me, and I've been insulted, telling me why the abduction occurred and what these beings were. All I can tell you is that when I had seen them, that is tough. It was literally horrific. The shock, the total lack of empathy. It was just a nightmare. So to me, I was just a piece of meat on a slab. I had nothing was explained to me. Their modus operandi was not revealed, but it was a nightmare. And I've had, as I said, I've had people telling me, "Oh, it's for your own good," insulting, and they're laughed at, because I remember when you come forward with the truth and then being invited onto certain television shows, you're there to tell the truth. No, I was a laughing stock, and that I'm not here for sympathy, but I was also very annoyed, because I thought, well, you're all looking at this completely backwards. The way that people have got it pigeonholed into certain brackets, and the draconians or the archons here, and the greys here, and the reptilians are working hand in claw with the greys, that they're AI subservient beings. Can anyone please prove this to me? Can I prove what happened to myself? No. But what I can tell you is that this has forced me, like yourselves, to look into the phenomena on varied levels of understanding. So, but as I said, it gets very difficult, because you continuously get attacked because of people's structured belief systems. And I think as human beings, not like the Greys, because they operate as one hive mind consciousness, as an entity that is able to be aware of all of the information. Whereas we as humans, we're very unpredictable, even to one another. So I think this is where the difficulties come into effect when we're trying to work out what it is that we're dealing with. But I can tell you, I think that they were interdimensional. Their modus operandi was somehow connected with the origins of what we were. Andy, you mentioned quite interestingly about the soul, and Neil, the soul and consciousness, and that we are containers for this energy, this source. So it's evident that they're looking for something that they themselves are denied or do not have themselves. And if you think about it, I didn't see any form of reproduction or hybridization going on there. That is merely theoretical in nature with my understanding of that. But I kept questioning, well, why are the Greys interested in reproduction if they themselves cannot reproduce? Are they wanting to create a new genus? Does this go all the way back to the fabled, to a degree, story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden? And that the story has been grossly distorted to other quite incredible facts that might tell us a lot and reveal more about what really occurred back then.
Yeah. It's interesting because they mention a serpent in Adam and Eve's story, and I'm very interested in that because the idea, as Zachariah Stitchin, who talked about the idea of the, forget the people now,
Anunnaki,
the race,
Nephilim.
Anunnaki, yeah, that's it, and the planet that
the Ark,
supposedly they come to orbit with Earth, and supposedly they came Nibiru, and it came from Mesopotamia. The idea is that those people were the ones that are in communication with them in ancient Mesopotamia, which is modern day Iraq, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
And so, I'm interested in that because it's almost like as if they gave them the technology and birthed civilization. And this is where it later connects up to the what Zachariah Stitchin talked about and what Lloyd Pye talked about was the fact that they suggested that they took their own kind of DNA of the Anunnaki and seeded it with possibly the Neanderthals to produce mankind, and that's why we've got Neanderthal DNA.
That's correct.
And this is what he also suggested was what the sightings are of Bigfoot, are the Neanderthals that haven't died out, but they've just been pushed further and further into the forests. They don't want to hang around humans, basically, which is the interesting thing. What's your take on any of that?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because going back to the interdimensional hypothesis, what's curious is the fact, and removing ourselves slightly away from the theoretical aspect of creation, and I believe most definitely in those researchers, but it's funny how you kind of like always had those thoughts, those feelings when I was younger, because like you and Andy, Neil, I never felt like I was part of this world, and I was always questioning. Now, in terms of Lloyd Pye, brilliant, amazing researcher, and of course, Zishin, brilliant, among with many other scholars. We're all there trying to put the pieces together. Now, what's interesting, if the Bigfoot, or the Sasquatch, as it's known in varied other circles, was physical in terms of its origins here on Earth, well, it's interesting because they normally or can mind speak with certain people. This has been reported. And we have to be careful because do they themselves have their own domain, their own reality, their own dimensional little doorway? Because we haven't found them. It's the same with the dogman, the werewolf, that is truly terrifying, like the Sasquatch. The smell, the sense of timelessness, everything goes quiet when they appear, and the truly horrific nature of the encounters that people have with these beings. So it's interesting, it's possible that they have got some access to a hidden earth, or that they are underground, but I believe that perhaps there are doorways that are opened for them to come through. The same with a lot of victims, and I say victims, who have mysteriously disappeared at the hands of these Neanderthals, as they're called, or these, Bigfoot, the ape man, literally vanished out of thin air. So I think when we look at the dogman, the werewolf, the Sasquatch, there are similarities between the nature of these beings and how they communicate or connect with their subjects, or I would say victims. So, where are they all? We seem to be dealing with one part physical that structures itself as if it's there, it's real, it smells, the fear, the way that they apparently eat their prey, and then they disappear like they don't exist. So, we've heard stories also within Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, where such episodes where these beings have been seen coming out of portals from the ground. This is incredible. And then they just disappear. And UFOs seem to go in and out also. They're 1 minute they're here, the next they disappear, the same as these cryptids as they're known. Paul Sinclair's done a lot of research, brilliant man in up north in West Yorkshire, around that area, Bempton. And he's had a lot of cases where these werewolves have been seen, truly horrific. And even one werewolf, I remembered, I'll never forget this, at one of his lectures, one werewolf that was seen and documented by some unfortunate souls was wearing an earring in its ear.
Oh, I remember that. That's a weird one, isn't it? Trendy werewolves.
So when you look at this, and this is where I'm also formulating ideas within certain levels of reality. And when you look into near-death experiences or the other side, we know that there are astral planes, and there are several layers to them. And we also are creators. Through our mind, we create. So everything that's manifested within the mind can be created. So we have to ask ourselves the question, are these creations that are somehow infiltrating themselves within our reality have found a way through to us? It's interesting. Are we co-creators with them? Have we created them within our mythology, and that they have become a reality? We don't know. And of course, people will slap you down and say how ridiculous. They are beings that obviously hide out in the mountains somewhere. But I will say to you that the truly horrific nature of these beings, it cannot be underestimated that when people have encountered these beings, the true nature of fear, that this is something that I have, and we all know, has to be explained. The true nature of that fear is evident, because if you're dealing with a species that is there for the betterment of our civilization, I doubt that, because you hear in multiple cases about, the dreadful state of cadavers being found, people being found that the system doesn't want you to talk about, bodies that have been found that disappeared in mysterious circumstances and found somewhere else. I mean, this is not suggesting to me that we're dealing with love and light, or species of extraterrestrials or hominids or dogmen. Far from it.
Yeah, go on, Andy.
I was just going to say, it's oh man, this is just so
deep, isn't it?
It is.
That's where you'll find yourself going. Very deep.
No, carry on here. I did have a question. It's gone now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking about a couple of things initially. One was something else that I found in your book. I think it's Paul Asko. Paul Asko.
Yes.
Yeah. He was talking about the various frequencies that these abductions take place on the UFOs aside. And he thinks that they kind of shift between frequencies of the spectrum. And this explains why you might see a flying saucer with different colors, or why they're hard to photograph and appear on film because they're shifting or phasing in and out of reality.
Yes.
Which, suggests that they could have traveled from a far star system, but they seem to be using other terms of appearing and disappearing like magicians, really.
That's right. Yes, and Paul Asco is another good friend, lovely guy, and he had his experience as a young lad with his father and brother, or he had communication from these beings through the lights that were seen within the cloud, two of them. Now, with regards to this analogy, what's interesting is that if you watch films like The Thing, John Carpenter's amazing film The Thing, and we all know that it was about some scientists in a frozen part of the world, and of course they were dealing with an extraterrestrial that had crashed and was replicating human form, and of course it was more paranoia because they didn't know where it was, because it was feeding off the people. Now, when you look at this phenomena, when we examine it, we also have to address the crashed saucer accounts, which absolutely, undeniably have happened, have occurred, I'm sure of it, and that they have some of these bodies on ice. But is it possible that this force or these entities, wherever they're coming from, they have to build themselves within our reality? And this is why, interestingly, I was curious, and I've mentioned this in Terrestrial Trespassers, but in future works, when we hear stories of crashed retrieval programs, there is a program through the United States of America where these crash retrieval teams are in force, they're in effect. And it's strange that these objects come down in remote areas. My brothers even kind of thought that was kind of strange. But even more strange is when the analysis of the said material that we hear about, we can't prove, but a lot of the material is Earth-based, but there's a small percentage which is not. And this may indicate that we are dealing with an intelligence far mentally advanced than we are, that can actually replicate itself as it transfers into our reality. That means it is taking the substance or the materials from this world and shaping it as it comes in from their reality into ours. Now, we have to create deep-sea diving equipment to even just go down a very small level that we can reach, because most of the ocean is uncharted, it's unreachable. So we have to create equipment in order to survive in hospital. Oh, I can't get the name out. Thank you very much. I'm twisting my words here. Well, we all have those problems. None of us are perfect. Environments. And if you think about it, these so-called extraterrestrials will have to adapt themselves within our environment. If you are, for instance, looking at completely separate, but kind of like drawing upon the powers here, the human soul, the spirit of man and woman, that within this reality has to incarnate into a biological form in order to live on Gaia, on Earth. So we have a container with which to animate ourselves. So I believe that this force or these forces seems to replicate itself within our reality. And because of this, it is able to remove itself just as quickly as it has replicated, as it goes back out again. There is evidence left behind of this phenomena, no different from a soul leaving a body, and we have a dead something there, the vehicle there. So I believe that, we've been told, well, no, we got spaceships coming from other planets. But I'm not so sure about that. I think more in terms of the interdimensional hypothesis, or the hyperdimensional hypothesis is more that we could possibly be dealing with.
I've always found it interesting that when they look at the planets in our solar system, we've always had the official word from NASA that, you can't live on that planet, it's too hot, you can't live on that planet, it's too cold, or that one is a gas giant, and all this kind of stuff. And yet, if there are aliens out there coming from other planets, in theory, you could put forward the argument that NASA hasn't been telling us the truth about these planets. They'll tell you anything, but there's aliens on there. We spotted them with our probes. No, they're not going to tell you that anyway.
Remember the word for it.
Yeah, they had this. I forget the report now that was published by this think tank before NASA kind of got going. and they said, look, should you discover alien life or extraterrestrial stuff out there, you should keep it from the public. And so really when NASA does start sending, or has started sending out probes and things around to various planets, Venus, Mars, etc., how do we know that they're telling us the truth about those planets? You know, there's too much radiation, they're too hot, they're whatever it is. And yet these, you know, people say, well, you can't get from there to here. You know, they may not be coming 20 million light years or something from wherever. They could be just coming, and in our terms of traveling, it's literally just over the road from our point of view. Yes, it takes us maybe a year to get a probe to say Venus or Mars or wherever it may be, because we're going at our rocket speed. But for these craft that can zip like that, they could be here within 10 minutes or something, I'm sure.
Yes.
So I think that, you know, we've got a lot of people being blindfolded about that possibility. They could be on the planets within our own solar system. And in fact, going back, you know, maybe 80 years or so, people always assumed, that guy that crashed into the thing, he's someone from Mars, or they're from Venus or something like that. They used to believe that, and they never. It was only until NASA started to come along and change our viewpoint about those planets, and that's why we suddenly think, well, there can't be anything such as flying saucers or aliens, because there's no way they can get from there to here, when in fact they could be literally coming through our own solar system.
Well, I mean, the moon is one suspect, isn't it? And Mars. Well, NASA, as we all know, never a straight answer. I mean, if you had the moon landings and they've actually taped over the original moon landing, what does that tell you for a historic moment in time for our human species? I think there's a lot of question marks that indicate that even the Space Administration have been lying to us. They are absolutely at pains to ensure that, oh yes, we have a system rather like Earth, but by the way, it's too far away for us to worry about. Every single time they contradict themselves, and it is true. I agree with you, Neil and Andy here, because we don't know what's out there. We are told one thing. We don't have the money or the means to go up there ourselves, and these space administrations are also controlled by military factions now, and they are told to do what they have to do and say what they have to say. So there is every possibility to assume that this phenomena is far closer to us than we have been led to believe. There's been no official inquiry, no real official inquiry that has succeeded in actually proving what we are dealing with. Not one of them, none of them. In fact, we keep going around in circles every single time, and this is where the proof in the pudding is. Because if you're not wanting to address a phenomena that is being reported and recorded on film, by the way, not just radar, we've dealt with all that before, but on film, this tells us categorically that we are dealing with a phenomena that goes beyond the level of what we have been led to believe it is. And I think this now opens up a can of worms, and the system that we're serving is getting very worried, because there's a lot of important individuals who are now coming forward, not just David Grush, who is a very high senior official within military establishments, but also other people, like Ross Coulthart. And he emailed me a few times, Ross Coulthart. He's the author of In Plain Sight, and he's been fighting for this disclosure. And you can see that it's so hidden within these private private companies who are hiding this technology. They have no right to do that, because that belongs to all of us. Who do these people think they are, that they have exclusive rights to the phenomena and that you don't, and that turn the other way, there's nothing to see here. And even we have arguments stating, the UFOs we're seeing now is because of our own technology, back-engineered technology from alien hardware. Rubbish. Absolute poppycock. I think if that was the case, then we would have an entire legion of these crafts that would be seen by even people with telescopes, with even a normal telescope, out in space, which you can use. So I believe there's been a huge cover-up, and I agree with a lot of other researchers that we are being hoodwinked into the belief, and this is what they do. they create confusion. They want no transparency to anything. They love that, those at the top, because they know that they can turn one person against another and create all this division and confusion. That's how they want it. They don't want any transparency, and they hate people who are wanting to dig for that truth or look for that truth. So yes, you're absolutely right, Neil. It could be right above us.
Have you heard of this concept that they actually want to build railways on the moon?
No, I didn't hear that. No, I never heard that. No.
Apparently that's in the news recently. There's plans to put railways up there. My prediction is they'll keep delaying it and delaying it and delaying it and delaying it, and it'll probably never happen.
A bit like HS2.
Yeah, exactly that.
I mean, let's put it this way. I mean, isn't it strange to know that we had allegedly gone to the moon in 1969, and we're finding enormous problems now to get that technology back again in order to make the same journey. And even these rockets that have been sent there, I don't think we're getting the real information sent back to us. It's the same with Mars, with the Cydonia region, and Professor Richard Hoagland, and many other researchers, who have studied not just the moon landings, but also these other areas of interest. And the system that we serve slams down hard on them. I remembered, I think it was a program I watched, I can't remember what it was called, and there was a person who was going around the space museum, and the person was questioning the size of the entrance and exit of where the astronauts came out of one of the Apollo crafts. And they said, well, if they've had their suits on, there wouldn't be enough room for their backpack to get through there. And of course, they were told to go away, basically, and they didn't want to answer the question. So this is another area that's nasty, because you will not get any clear statements or answers. The only things you'll get is the official narrative and not the one that you're questioning. So the best thing to do with anything is to question everything that comes your way. Look into it. Don't just go along with the official narrative. You have to find your answers, because the way I'm seeing it is that, there's been a lot of lies that's been implemented, and a divide, because these echelons, these dragons at the top that control the puppets, they're puppets that we see as our masters here. I mean, they just revel in destruction. They revel in no transparency. They revel in no creativity. If you look at the world that we're in at the moment, has there been any real progress? No. It's just all about money, and it's disgusting. And, I just think that we are living in a backward society, and that we could do so much more to enhance living conditions and bring peace to people, because, ultimately, that's what I would like to see. Truth and peace, and people helping one another to enrich and enhance our lives, to make it something so beautiful and amazing. But no, the system chooses to not do that. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, what we live in, Philip, is basically clown world.
Yes. Noddy's Toyland from Enid Blyton. Yes, I like that. I love that. That has humoured me somewhat, gentlemen, when we look at it like, and I always say Noddy's Toyland. I mean, it's ridiculous. If you listen to the radio advertisements sometimes, one minute you get all childlike adverts, and I said this to a family member, childlike adverts, and then you get something so depressing like illnesses or all these other things that's designed to bring you down. There's nothing really to suggest that anything good is happening in the world, when it is happening. The good is happening in the world, but the system will not want to report it, because they do not want people to rise their consciousness above and beyond the level of the way that this system has programmed our consciousness. And this is what it's all about. I believe it's a war, a silent war, and I believe that a psychic one as well, most definitely a psychic war, that deals with a lot about our ability as a species and our brilliance, our excellence, and how the system is utilizing every method at its disposal to destroy, to subjugate the masses, because there's too many of us. and they're trying to find different ways of doing that. So yeah, it's a crying shame. When I get back on the other side, I'm going to get a refund.
Getting back to the moon landing slightly, because that's always of interest to me anyway, and Andy as well. If you actually listen to the commentary of Neil Armstrong on the first moon landing, he's obviously the first guy that comes down the ladder and he's walking about. And then it's Buzz Aldrin, the second one that comes down the ladder. And as he's coming down the ladder, you actually hear Neil Armstrong instructing Buzz Aldrin where to put his hands, where to put his feet. He says, you come down here on the next rung of the ladder, now come down the next one, now come down the next one. And you'd think, well, my God, this guy, the way it sounds as if Buzz Aldrin has never come down a lunar lander before, he doesn't know where to put his feet. But exactly, he must have done it 100 times in training, surely.
Well, yes.
He knows where to put his feet. So why would he need Neil Armstrong to help him come down the ladder? I just found that was a bizarre thing,
Well, there's a lot of anomalies with regards to that, and you will have people who will slam you and tell you that the official narrative, yeah. But my question is, where was the camera that was filming Neil Armstrong coming down the ladder when he made contact? Because there's pictures of him coming down the ladder for the first time, and did he run out and put the camera there?
No, that was fixed to the leg. There was a small camera that was fixed to one of the legs, pointing towards the ladder, which is that camera.
But all the lighting was all odd, wasn't it? All the rest of it.
Well, suppose it was on the moon or something. Yeah, and the shadows are a little bit off. There's so many things that we're talking about that.
I've got my own theories about myself, and I think there's, to be honest with you, a lot of stuff there that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But we have to stand to attention and nod and agree that it all happened, that it's all normal, and that there was nothing really fishy about it at all. And of course, but we weren't born yesterday, were we? And if it was such a if it was such a historical moment, why would you wipe over the original tapes?
Well, that's right. Yeah, to record "I Love Lucy" or something. But it's incredible how all these other lunar landers, they've sent small robotic craft. And they get there and they fail, they tip over, or they've had 2 in the last couple of months that have tipped over. And yet supposedly the lunar module managed to make it down each time without tipping over. And they say, well, that's because we had men on board controlling it and things like that.
I'm sure that we're going to find Donald Trump on there waving his happy flag. God love him, God bless him, and on there, so he'll just spill the beans. What I love about that guy is that he just says it as it is, and I know that he knows what's going on. He knows, and that's why they do not want him in power. Whichever way you see him, the Draconians don't want him in power. And if you look at this, when he was president, every single day they were trying to bring him down, all the time. Do you find that with Biden? No, a warmonger. Yeah. Did you find that with Bush, a warmonger?
Even when Biden sniffs children's hair and says inappropriate things, the media are like, "Oh, poor Biden, he isn't he saying silly things?" And then Trump makes gaffes, and it's the most serious thing in the world.
Well, you know why, don't you? Because they don't want him in, because he is not one of them. He's not working or operating on their level of their narrative. That's the reason why.
Well, are we supposed to be politically neutral? I mean, we're not politically neutral, Neil, but what I want to say to anyone American is don't vote communist, okay? And the people of Britain, actually, because we've got our own elections coming up. Don't vote communist. We all know that the Tories are crap, and we all know that the Republicans are pretty crap as well. But don't go for what's even worse, which is communism, i.e. Labour and the Democrat Party.
Who do we vote for then?
This is the problem, isn't it? I mean, the nearest I can come to in terms of anything that's half sane in the UK would be Reform. They're not perfect, but they're a hell of a lot better than Labour. Labour will be a car crash. Labour will destroy this country.
Oh, yes, of course they will.
I mean, their idea of kind of solving the immigration issue is basically open all the borders. And all the Liberals were clapping, cheering, isn't it wonderful? And what I would say to the Liberals is, if you have a house party, okay, do you just leave your front door open for anyone to come in? No, you don't. If you go to a nightclub, would you just get rid of security, get rid of the doorman and just let anyone in? No, you don't.
Well, I've got an idea here. Why don't you ask Gary Lineker to open up his house and let them go and live with him?
I would love...
I'm sure he'd like that.
Gary, if you're listening, mate, open your house up and just open your front door, get rid of all your locks and just let anyone in. That's absolutely...
Use his money to help them.
Yeah.
Money, isn't it?
Just let us know how it is. George Clooney, true story, George Clooney, who's a little bit of a libtard, let's face it, he had a house in Italy, apparently, and he was all pro-migration and pro-bringing everyone in. His house got absolutely ransacked and he sold it and fled Italy. So, there we are.
Right. Well, I think it's to de-sovereignize our country and to destroy, and I think that there is intent, not so much behind the puppets who take the orders from their masters. Yeah. They're rewarded, and as I said, they get their gongs and their riches, and they just leave the scene, and it's those at the top. But what we have to do is we have to work together. To try and resolve this problem, to understand that this system is dividing people against people. Yeah. They're doing it all the time. We want world peace. We want everyone to get on. You believe in that. You're quite happy to do that as long as you're not harming us. But no, the system is wanting to destroy and turn people against each other. That is what's really going on. They want to destabilize the structured system that we have. And there is a plan to do that. I don't care what anyone tells you.
Alex Jones had an interesting concept because
yes.
whatever people think of Alex Jones and Elon Musk, I think Elon Musk was, I don't know, maybe slightly on the dark side, but maybe flipped and gone light. But anyway, they come up with a concept, and Alex Jones says it's not really about left and right, it's about pro-human or anti-human. So, and I'm the same. I don't care about political parties. I don't care about left or right. I don't care about Republicans or Democrats or Labour or Tories. What I care about is pro-humanity or anti-humanity. Is the party bringing in policies that help people or destroy people?
Well, they're destroying people, aren't they? That's what they're doing. That's all they know what to do.
Isn't it interesting? We've got billions to give to war, missiles, killing, destruction, murder. Suddenly, there's no money for people with starving kids or children. There's no money to help the homeless. We haven't got any money for struggling families who can barely pay their bills. Sorry, we're out of money. Oh, here, Ukraine, have billions to spend on war. Go for it.
And you know what? They are evil. And I want to tell you, they are pure evil. They are working towards an agenda, a plan. They have their instructions, and whoever gets in eventually will be got to them, because that does a lot for some people, especially about the awards and gongs to make them rich. They can clear off and live their life somewhere where no one's going to bother them. But be very careful, because what you send out, you'll get back. And I don't care what people say. You know, this isn't the end here. They can't take it with them. And, you know, you really want to sell yourself on that level? I don't know. I would never want to do that. I know whose side I'm on. I can assure you of that.
Yeah. Isn't it the Freemasons who have the motto, order out of chaos, order ab chaos?
That's right.
Yeah. Well,
it's getting back to David Icke kind of stuff, where it could be reptilians controlling the world through the politics of war and stuff like that, maybe?
The archons.
Yeah, I would say whatever the label, I would say darkness. In other words, pure evil. So whether they're demons or whether they're archons or whether they're reptilians or whether they're Dracos or whether they're whatever, just a dark force that hates humanity and hates this planet. And what the label is doesn't really matter. And that's what we're up against. And that is what all the governments are serving. That's what the highest politicians, most of them, not all of them, most of them are serving. It's what the institutions are serving. And you're right, Philip, it's all about division. So whether it's old versus young, black versus white, trans versus non-trans, gay versus straight, male versus female, toxic masculinity versus whatever, all of that is division. And what David Icke says is get rid of the labels, let's unite as one, as humanity.
And it's to do with the genetic structuring as well with our species. They want to cancel out the creation, God's creation, if you want to call it God, God's creation, the source. And I believe that's why it goes much, much deeper, that people will never really be able to comprehend, because you, like anyone, you have to do your research and you start putting the pieces together, and you'll find that this thing is absolutely huge. It's not just a tiny piece that we put in a box of the UFO coming from another planet. There is so much more that has the connections linked, not just to that, but many other facets interlinked with it. And you'll find a lot of the problems are far closer at home here than what's really going on out there. It's all happening here.
And people really need to wake up to this, because you can bury your head in the sand for a while, but there's two really disturbing things with all this. Number one, the rich elites are abandoning American buildings.
Oh yes,
underground bank.
Yeah, that's right. I've heard of that.
Number two, where this is pushing towards, they want to push towards World War III.
That's right.
And we've got the Democrat Party talking about, in quotations, limited nuclear strikes. There is no such thing as a limited nuclear strike. If you have a limited nuclear strike where it involves Russia or China, the entire world will ignite. End of story. And that will be the end of it.
Too many people, that's how they say it.
Yeah, exactly that. And the stupidity of it. So imagine you're a rich elitist and you've got your bunker and World War III's going on and you're clapping and cheering and isn't it wonderful, mankind is going to be destroyed. Okay, what now? Okay, so after a year all your food supplies are gone, you pop up out of the bunker, there's nothing left, mate.
That's right.
Where's your food supply now? Where's your crops now?
But they're psychopaths. They don't think about that. They're psychopaths. They don't think about that. And anyway, their substructures are supposed to be absolutely incredibly enormous, and will be able to last them for decades. But I wouldn't want to live in that environment. I'm sorry, I couldn't. I'd rather be out on the top and go with it quickly and deal with it that way, and then go and get a refund, and then ask them what on earth was that all about?
Yeah. The problems with these elites is they are a mixture of rich and stupid.
They are.
You look at somebody like Justin Trudeau, that smug-faced minstrel clown. You look at his face, his little smug communist face. He is rich and stupid. He's an idiot. And the trouble is, it's not just him, it's all of them. And they're all in lockstep. So if you take your Justin Trudeau, your Joe Biden, your Hamza Youssef, and your Jacinda Ardern, they're all having the same shitty communist policies all at the same time. Well, it's all about destruction of freedom of speech. It's all about wokeism and liberal stupidity all at the same time, all bringing this in. And we're supposed to say, oh, it's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that at the same time Europe's borders are being invaded by people who, let's face it, hate Europe and hate the Anglo society. At the same time that this is happening, in America, they're also being invaded by half of Latin America coming in, hammering at their borders, wanting, benefits and housing.
They're being bussed in or something, aren't they?
Yeah, they're getting bussed in, Neil. And and you know what's funny is that when I think it was the Florida governor that bussed some of the immigrants up to kind of Democrat areas in Cape Cod and New York, and suddenly the Democrats were like, well, not here, we don't want them here. As long as they're down south, they're nowhere near us.
You can see what they're doing. They are dividing, they are destroying, and they are. It is the most evil thing that anyone can ever do. But I wouldn't worry too much about that, because even though we're going to have to try and deal with most of the chaos here, at the end of the day, I can assure you that we will be liberated, and not on this level, and that they themselves would have created their own prisons. They think they are serving their Lord and Master. Well, all that they will have is darkness and terror, and we will have a very different existence.
Yeah. Do you know what would be great if you had like a little collection of islands, and all the little rich elitists and all the idiots and all the smug-faced minstrels and the communists, and they could all just go and live on these little islands and piss off out of it and just leave the rest of us alone. That would be great.
That's right. And then we can rebuild a utopia that should have been.
Yes.
So we've got...
So this is it, Philip. I think that this world, this planet, this Earth should be heaven. We should be heaven. We should have a heavenly society, and I think that is what life was supposed to be about. And it got hijacked.
You have got it. You've got it right on the nail. The system has been hijacked, and what's happened is that we are to suffer through a system that is operating on another intelligence's blueprint of their agenda. But don't worry, there are higher forces, and we are part of that, and something they can never have. They're fools. Even if they try to destroy every part of us in the physical here, they can't, because we're connected to source, and they are not. And that is the big difference. So it doesn't bother me at all. It bothers me what's happening, but I have my faith and my conviction. In fact, I know that there is another side, so it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
So nuclear war then, and so now it's over to Bob for the weather.
Interestingly, have you heard this, Neil and Philip? Interestingly, and I can't remember where I heard this from, that some of the good guy aliens connections seem to say that if mankind ever did really go down the route of pressing the big red button for the nuclears, the UFOs or the good ETs would turn up and try and stop.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. No,
so we could have the possibility of wiping out life on this planet. And
that's correct. Yep. No, I don't believe that.
Would the good guys really sit back and just watch that?
No. Well, where are they? Where is their help? Have we had any help from them?
But then there's the free will issue.
No, I don't believe that.
They have messed about with nuclear weapons in the silos, though, haven't they?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say to you, if they were that concerned for us on a level of hierarchy, and please, people say, oh, they've signed some disclosure, cosmic galactic thing. What a load of old rubbish. They could have helped us. They could have assisted us in some level, to some degree, but we are left alone. And I don't believe that we will be rescued by anything or anyone. I will, if that's the case, they'll be coming in now. If they're starting to see that World War III is going to happen, they'll be here trying to stop that. So I believe that the phenomena of the Force, no, I think that we will be left to our own devices. And if it happens, it happens. I would like to believe that there will be some mass ascension and that these crafts come to save us. But it's never happened in World War II, never happened in World War I, happened in any of the major disasters across the world ever that we know of. So no, I don't believe that.
They seem to take part in wars, though, don't they? But they're not necessarily, in the sense they're not fighting them.
Yeah.
They observe in it, like the food fighters.
But they've never stopped it. They just allow it to carry on.
Yeah. They take part in it, observe, and I think they take rich pickings. I mean, I've heard of a case, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I thought it was an interesting story, that these Vietnam US soldiers were going through some jungle or something in Vietnam.
Oh, yes.
Early 70s. And they came across some greys or something, picking up human body parts or something from some battle. For whatever reason they wanted to do. Maybe they're just tidying it up. I don't know. But is that the case that you were thinking of, Philip, or is it...
No. Mine was the upturned aircraft that was discovered in a jungle, and they found all the bodies of the crew strapped and all the esophagus pulled out, and their name tags, or almost like a human mutilation that was found all the way back in Vietnam. I think it was Vietnam. I think it was then, or something like that. And it was an account that was registered and recorded. But of course, the system we serve does not want people to know about that. You're not allowed to mention anything of that.
Was greys or aliens tied to that in any way?
Well, the aircraft, the plane itself was literally like it had been stopped in the air, turned upside down, and gently placed within a deeply forested area. Impossible. So it'd been placed by something, and when they found the bodies, terrible state.
And of course, the Vietnam War, Neil, this and Philip, you might be aware of this. It's come out that actually the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was supposedly like a Vietnamese government communist forces attacked like a US naval ship, that never actually happened. That's come out in the news. So the whole thing was based on...
It was a CIA operation, or something like that.
A bit like the weapons of mass destruction with Iraq. But what I was going to say, Neil, have you heard of this one in terms of why night vision goggles are green? And this relates to the Vietnam War, and it goes a bit spooky and wooky. Have you heard of this one?
You've talked about this, haven't you? But I can't remember what it was. Yeah, you mentioned
it. So it would make more sense for night vision goggles to be red based because, and I learnt this in cadets many years ago, is that when you're out and about, the red kind of preserves your night vision, whereas green, if you look at something green and then look away, it kind of like your eyes will have to adjust, where you don't really get that if you've got like a red torch. So when they've been using night vision, and that's been around for quite some time, believe it or not, the Second World War, they had night vision scopes. They're huge, great things on rifles. But they kind of like decided to experiment with different colours just to see how troops got on with these different colours. So they went with green, they went with yellow, they went with red, and they went with blue. There's a bit of feedback going on. I don't know where that's coming from.
Sounds like a lightsaber.
It is now. No, I realise that my laptop is very low of juice, and if I plug it in, it's going to make the sound, and I'm just going to.
Oh,
it's just going to about to cut out.
Right, we're wrapping it up then.
So yeah, basically, there was they were testing out lots of different like colours for night vision during the Vietnam era, and they discovered when they were using red, the helicopter pilots were going crazy, and the gunners were shooting at things that they said were kind of like demons with wings flapping around. And for some reason they kept seeing these demons, and then they take the goggles off and there's nothing there. They put them on and the demons were there, and you had these gunners shooting these demons. When they switched to green, this is interesting. When they switched to green, the demons disappeared, but then they started seeing UFOs. Which is why sometimes when you see UFO documentaries and they're using green night vision, sometimes they kind of, so whether it's the fact that they're on infrared level or something, I don't know, but it's very weird.
Okay, thanks, Andy. I think we better wrap it up there because Philip's going to fall out of the dice soon.
Well,
with his
I realised that I hadn't got I charged the computer, and I realised when I thought I had it plugged in, the power switch is off, so the lead was not. But of course, that's why, Neil, you said you can't hear anything, because that's working with no power lead in. But I am just about to. It's just about to die on me, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us, Philip Kinsella, author of Terrestrial Trespassers, which is available on Amazon. And people can buy your book from Amazon and other leading bookshops. And you're working on another book at the moment, Philip, aren't you?
Yes, I'm working on a new book. That's a spiritual book that looks at the creation hypothesis, the incarnation, reincarnation, and also the avatar, elevated souls that come in, but also questioning a lot about the functioning of the spiritual body, the second body that we occupy within this form, and of course, as well as the negative influences that have a profound effect upon us as within this, and of course in the past as well. So yes, I'm working on that one at the moment.
Excellent. All right, and you're also the host of Twin Souls with your brother Ronnie, so look out for that on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. So I'd like to thank you, Philip, for your time, and join us next month on the Paranormal UK Radio Network with the Paranormal Peep Show. So it's good night from myself, Neil, and good night from Andy.
See you later. Take care.
Cheerio. Good night. You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, #1 for paranormal topics in the UK.